This episode sponsored by Trailblazers. It's May, and you know what that means. It's National Bike Month. Trailblazers is hosting this region's bike challenge and will be hosting fun challenges and events you can participate in to win all month long. All you have to do is log your rides. For more information, visit www.love2ride.net/NW-Arkansas. Hope to see you out on the trails. Support for this episode comes from Signature Bank.
Hey, this is Gary Head at Signature Bank of Arkansas. We founded Signature Bank in 2005 with local ownership to serve our communities with the best bankers with the most authority to do business. We have succeeded in growing our bank to over $875 million in assets. We have locations in Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, Brinkley, and we have recently expanded to Harrison and Jonesboro. We have 176 teammates in climbing. Our teammates love our communities and the customers that we serve. We're always here to serve and eager to do so. As Chairman and CEO, I welcome your call to have the opportunity to serve you. Please call 479-684-3700 or visit online at signature.bank and tell them that you heard about us at I Am Northwest Arkansas. Signature Bank of Arkansas is a member of the FDIC and an equal housing lender.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to be with you today. I am sitting here, as you guys always know, I come down to the Center for Innovation at the Fayetteville Public Library. The only place to be, of course, especially on a hot day like today. But I'm here in the Center for Innovation in the sound studio with none other than Olivia Trimble. Olivia is the founder and owner of Sleet City Signs and Murals. And she is an outstanding artist. She is well known in this community, and she's somebody that I have been trying to get on this podcast for a very, very long time. And we finally got our acts together, and she is here in front of me today. So without further ado, folks, I want to welcome Olivia Trimble to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, Randy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So what's going on with you? I figured you've got a new store that just opened up right close to the corner of North College and North, and you're doing a lot of things in the community. And there's so much I want to talk about, but I would just love for you, for those that the uninitiated, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about who Olivia Trimble is. We call that your superhero origin story.
Okay, I'm Olivia Trimble. I'm a sign painter and muralist. I have grown up in Northwest Arkansas and lived here for most of my life, except for a quick stint in Northeast Arkansas where I picked up a husband and a daughter. So I feel like, I'm home here in Northwest Arkansas. I'm a second generation sign painter. My stepdad, Eric Snodgrass, has been painting signs longer than I've been alive, and I'm 35, so it's a long time. And I have two little girls. They help me on my jobs and projects, so a lot of people see them around. I currently have a few projects going. I have a new art supply store, Sleet City Art and Supply. I was awarded the Interchange Fellowship, which is a really big deal, and it's a grant that's funding 2 public art projects, not in Northwest Arkansas because we have a ton of public art here, but they are funding 2 public art projects in rural Arkansas, one in Eudora, which is in super southeast Arkansas, and it's a super cute little community, and one in north central Arkansas, that's Fox, and it is also a super cute community, but they're very different, and they're very rural, and they are very much in need of public art and there are a bunch of people in those spaces that are fantastic artists. And what I hope to bring with this project is some ownership for the community of the pieces. So I'm not going in and saying, hey, it's me, Olivia Trimble. I'm going to put up a piece and you get to look at it and I'm going home.
Right.
It's a collaborative community piece to allow the community to weigh in on what makes their space, theirs. It's called a rural placekeeping project. And part of it that I'm very excited about is that we'll have a couple of artists in each space that are going to be paid to work on this project. And it will teach them how to, when I leave town, to put up their own public art. It's just the technical stuff that I've learned and I've had the privilege to learn as a second generation sign painter that I can pass on. So I may have skipped over a whole bunch of things, but those are the things that I'm really excited about.
What has been your
today.
biggest surprise in embarking on this project? I would imagine that maybe you had some preconceived notions about what it would be like, but then you got there and you were like, wow, this is totally not what I expected.
Well, I haven't, I work in Fox pretty often, so I'm feeling solid about that. And there may not be too many surprises, but when you have community conversations, that's not ever true. There's always a surprise. With Eudora, well, I'm just in love with all the good walls they have, number one. But I'm just thrilled with, I guess, how they're letting this project unfold. So we had a community meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was prom weekend. And that meant that we didn't have young people there. We didn't have a lot of parents there. Folks tied to the schools, there weren't quite as many as there could have been. And so with this one, I maybe assumed that we'd have that meeting and we'd come up with a concept and we'd be rolling. And what came up were a lot of issues that hadn't been talked about, which is the whole point of the project, is to kind of get the community's voice flowing. And we learned about some of those, and we're slowing down the project. And maybe we're adding a step that might fire up the community. We're saying, well, I don't have it confirmed, but the idea is that we might put up a piece that I just go in and paint that says, "Who is Eudora?"
Mm-hmm.
And we'll let that percolate for maybe 3 weeks or a month. And then we'll have an event to really get the community to say, well, I saw that and I thought about it for a couple of weeks and this is who it is. And this might bring us all kinds of things that are completely unexpected.
Yeah.
The whole thing with this project is that because I'm not driving what it's supposed to be about, the community is. That's the part that's surprising and scary to me. And I just want to make sure that folks are putting in their time to weigh in. And I think in Northwest Arkansas, we have all given a lot of time to different listening sessions or whatever. And sometimes not much comes of it. So What I want to make sure of is that the folks who participate, they feel like their contribution was valued. So I don't know. It's just the whole thing is unexpected, which is a challenge to myself. And it was intentional, but living it and saying, well, gosh, we didn't come up with the concept and I don't know what it's going to be. It could be something that's really, really warm and fuzzy. That's not what I expect necessarily. I expect it to be something that's more complicated. This is who we are. This is our history. These are our future concerns and challenges, or maybe some really bright things on the horizon. Southeast Arkansas is about to blow up with how they're handling, how do I phrase it? Well, the county that Eudora is in.
And this is in the Delta.
This is in the Delta.
Okay.
This is in Chico County, over by, a lot of people know where Lake Village is.
Yeah.
So it's down there. They're about
it's
to
like
get
right on the Mississippi River.
It's like right there.
Yeah.
They're about to get I think it's the second in the nation. It's a plant that processes trash, but turns it into energy.
Oh, wow.
So this is a big deal for Southeast Arkansas. And so, maybe this new piece that we're putting up will touch on that. I just don't know. So it's exciting and challenging, and it's hard for me to describe because it's in progress.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the next few months when we can kind of discover it. And it's surprising and so nice that the folks in that community are super welcoming and just they're about it. And, I've just lived really mostly in Northwest Arkansas. So I feel like I know a lot here, and I love going into a place and not reading the Wikipedia page or what the chamber puts out, but talking to folks about their community.
Sure.
It's just lovely and exciting.
Well, and you've had some experience, and you've been down this road before. I mean, for those that are listening, Olivia was the one that created several of the murals that I won't say that they were contested. I will just say that they were necessary murals that were put on walls throughout the city at different points of time in the last few years specifically. And some of you probably remember the Love Unites Us wall that Olivia painted. And then there was another one, Love Your Neighbor, which has been on T-shirts. You've seen it in a number of different iterations, but these all came about during the pandemic, I believe, and most of them did. And I think what originally spurred the whole Love Unites Us was that somebody had spray painted white pride on a wall at the south of town, I think near MLK, if I'm not mistaken. On MLK, yeah. So, and that's really where it seems like a bunch of individuals, local community members and community leaders all came together and said, how can we fix this? How can we address this issue in a way that's thoughtful and shows that, hey, we're trying to move this thing forward. We're not going backwards.
Yeah. With the Love Unites Us mural, the interest, I don't know. I have such complicated feelings about it. I mean, like most of the work that I do with Repaint Hate, every bit of it, honestly, I have complicated feelings about it because, in 2016, right after the presidential election that was here where we are currently sitting, there used to be the city hospital.
Sure.
And someone had painted the N-word on this building that all kind of people could see, kids see, young people walking to and from the library could see. And like, I was so naive then. I had the paint in my car and I saw it on Facebook and I was like, well, we can't have these kids seeing that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go cover it up. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I just wanted it gone. And so I covered it and I didn't design it very well. I scrawled it. I had no idea it was going to be seen by a whole bunch of people. And it just said, love wins, or love always wins. And it got a lot of attention. And then I guess I had a movement that started where we had a whole bunch of hate speech going up all over then. It's another case. I feel like there have been waves and there's been a building momentum of emboldened people who maybe in years past didn't feel as confident in being able to share hateful remarks and actions and all kinds of things that go with that. So that happened. And then there have been a few smaller things after that sometimes I'll just go cover it up real quick and I don't post about it. I just get rid of it. There was something on Jefferson Elementary, which is no longer an elementary school, but it's an adult education center in South Fayetteville. A lot of this happens in South Fayetteville, which is where I have always lived. And that's a whole situation in itself. But with 2020, there was another wave. So on this building, the Love Unites Us building, White Pride was put up. We repainted it. A whole bunch of people came together and put in physical labor. They sent drinks. They donated money. They just cheered us on and, rolled down the window and hollered, thank you, or they're so nice. And then not too long, maybe a few months later, someone came along and they tagged it and they marked out unites on the phrase love unites us. And they said love weakens us, which was so dumb. And so we covered that up. And then another one happened and I can't remember what the side of the building said. They defaced the front. And then on the side of the building, I think they put rebellion or some phrase that was used by the folks at the Capitol on January 6th, one of their slurs. And then on the back of the building, they tagged your days are numbered. So that was, a thing. And I think with that round, or I can't remember, it's been hit so many times on one of these rounds of, not just a tag, not just somebody's name that they scrawl in neat letters, but an intentionally hateful defacing of it. We left it and we left it for almost a year because I have had criticism that I think is well-founded that, I say, well, I want to cover this and show show people who are visiting our town who we are. But part of it's not just people who say, well, love unites us or love your neighbor or something that's positive, but there is another contingent here. So we left it up.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're trying to do our best, but we also have this happening and let's leave that there and let that be part of the story. This wall continues to get hit and continues to get hit and people have something to say. and our underlying message is there and theirs is there. And maybe let's let that sit and marinate for a few months. And I didn't want to touch it until the right moment. And the right moment happened when the Mighty by Design crew, Lakeisha and Stacy, secured a grant to work on this wall with the kids that they work with. They came up with a program with the help of our friend Nate Walls called Graffiti Feeds, where we got a crew of six young people of varying ages. And, my side note, my thing is that I think there are plenty of folks doing public art here who have means. Many of us are white. Most of the folks are men. And so it's exciting to me to get young, maybe non-white folks, maybe women into public art because there's a lot of money there, right?
Sure.
So this was so exciting because Lakeisha and Stacy and Nate pulled together this group of kids who were great artists. I didn't have to do anything really on this wall. And they came and they repaired the wall and they learned some skills so that now when there's a call, and I think most of these folks are still under 18. So for youth to put up public art and to get paid, because everyone deserves to get paid for their work, they now have the skills to do that. So we waited until the right time to do the wall. And so far, I drive by it every day. It's doing good. And I think it has so much more meaning and value now that we gave it that time to maybe have it maybe spark some different thoughts with people and to maybe bother them, and I hate for someone to be bothered to be the point, but sometimes you have to be bothered by something to step out of your comfort zone and maybe have a hard conversation with someone that you can reach, but you don't want to because it feels bad and maybe it could backfire and whatever, that discomfort can be a tool. So we did it. And then we had the next step, not be me necessarily, because I've done it,
Right.
but be some other young folks who gained skills, who got, love from people honking and thanking and giving shout outs, paid for their work, which was so cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Anyway, so, I have complicated feelings about the whole repaint hate thing that I do because I don't ever want to have to do it again.
Right.
Like the idea of what's the next thing that ought to be covered up, like what's it going to be? Because it seems like it maybe is uglier each time.
Right.
So wouldn't it be nice if we just didn't have
to worry about
another piece ever come out of it?
It's like the oncologist that comes in one day and is told that cancer is no longer a problem.
Yeah,
so,
great.
Yeah.
I'm out of a job. I would love that.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, clearly, and the only reason why I bring it up is because it is very germane to Northwest Arkansas, right? Because I think this, and we were talking about this offline, that this area is in the process of still finding itself, still figuring some things out. I tell people all the time, I mean, this is really the only place in Arkansas that I would live, and I love it. I really and genuinely enjoy it. And, I'm not conflicted by that, but I'm also under no illusions that this is a perfect utopia. I mean, we've got a long way to go, just like any place has.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we are putting in the work. We're willing to put in the work and the time and the effort to try to achieve that, right? And I mean, just a sampling of what you just talked about and what you experienced over these last 2 years during the pandemic is an example of that. So I think it's important for us. And these conversations are important to have, like working with these young people, just showing them how to problem solve, how to deal with issues. Because people aren't going to always agree with you. People aren't going to always be in concert with everything that you want to do. And this is a big world. We have to learn to live in it together. Totally. We have to learn, the differences that we each have as we come to the table. And I think it's important. The more we have these conversations, the better off we are. Yeah. It's when we sit and stew and go to our own corners and are left to our own devices is when problems happen. Right.
Like, with this whole thing where I don't even want to advertise it as a philosophy, but like what clicks for me is if I'm that upset about something, then I ought to take action. So I've done that. I try to do that. See the hate speech, paint over it, because my skill is painting. But that's not what I think everybody should do. I want people to see the work that I do and to know that I don't take myself super seriously and it just is what it is. I'm a painter and I can paint over something. And for them to say, well, I'm not a painter, but I'm a great project manager and I can step in and help guide something that I see maybe needs some guidance, or I'm a lawyer and I can do this, or everyone, I want people to use their own skill set, whatever it may be, to take action in whatever ways that they can. And so, like, I just really dislike that hate speech goes up so often, but I just am heartened by seeing folks take their own skill set and say, well, okay, well, I'll just step into action now. Great.
Right.
And so with, Northwest Arkansas as a whole, to kind of extrapolate that, I have seen in the last 4 to 6 years, so many folks who are just regular people living their lives, helping their neighbors, whatever. And they have taken that from a really small act that's always very meaningful, and they've scaled it up into something larger. So now 4 to 6 years later, I have friends who, maybe they haven't started out with a lot, who are now in leadership roles in all different spaces. And so I don't know, we certainly have a long way to go in many ways, but I'm so happy to see folks jumping in and having locals who really do have skin in the game guiding how the area is growing and changing. And there are a million examples of that.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about Olivia Trimble, the entrepreneur. Why did you decide to open up a shop? Was that a dream of yours?
Yes.
Was this something?
Okay. So this is my dorky dream. I have dorky dreams and they work out sometimes, and sometimes a whole bunch don't. So I don't always talk about the ones that don't work out. So I'm just going to talk about the three that have. First dorky dream, I wanted to have children, and I have 2 great girls, and I'm so happy. A second big dream was that, probably in 2015, I'd been painting commercial signs for a while. It's so fun to paint a logo if it's a really good one, but that's not what gets me super excited. Well, I mean, if it's a really good logo, it is. But I made a goal after landing my first really big mural job with Specialized Real Estate at Uptown Apartments. I painted a 400 square foot quilt mural, and I decided that I wanted to paint big walls for a living. That's what I wanted. These massive walls that, when I first look at them, I'm like, how in the heck am I going to paint this? Oh my God. And then I do it. That was cool. But I did it for a few years, and it's really hard labor, and it's hard to, to put it bluntly, my husband has a great job and he works extremely hard, and he doesn't have a ton of flexibility. And there are lots of gender roles in here, and we'll just save that for a different day. But I've always been the primary caregiver and kid picker upper, and somebody's barfing. It's me to, to go deal with it.
Right.
And it was hard to juggle being on a construction site and having to leave to go get a kid or to deal with whatever thing. And it became really stressful. And I started thinking about, what's after this? Because I may have mentioned my stepdad, Eric Snodgrass, is just about 60, and he's still painting signs, and he grinds so hard. He does so much more in a week than I can do in 2 months. But I can't be doing that when I'm old.
Sure.
That's not me.
Right.
So I've been thinking about, what is your other dream and what comes next? And my other dream is that I've always wanted to not even own it, but just go to an art supply store in Northwest Arkansas and get to have the experience that I have when we travel. And we don't travel much, but when we do, we make a point to visit the local art supply. And I think my family probably, they're so loving and great, but they know I'm a total ding dong about it, because I'll walk around and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these things. And, supplies that I'll never use in my own practice, but I'm just so excited about the potential behind each one. And I'm like as close to a kid in a candy store as you can get. So this fall of 2021, I had just wrapped a really, really, really big project that was a huge challenge, and one that was kind of a bucket list, and that was to paint a whole building in a quilt pattern. And I did that at Pelfrey's in downtown Rogers.
Yeah,
well,
Brian Bonk, Dr.
Brian
Bonk. Yeah, yes.
And I'm so excited about what they're doing there. Natural State Rabbit is, I guess, what it's rebranded to.
Yes.
So I got to do that massive...
You totally transformed that little strip of land there past where Onyx is located there in Rogers. I remember, because actually I was there physically working out of an office at Pelfrey's when you were doing the work.
That's funny.
I remember seeing it, and I was like, wow, and you just transformed it. And I was like, yeah, you should do it so that when people fly over Rogers, they can see it.
That would be so cool.
What you can actually spot it out, because if you look at downtown Rogers and where the new area is, you can look right above that and you'll see your work.
That's so rad. Yeah. And Marty Shutter, who's a good friend, he did a drone video for me of it. And it was just
very cool.
it hit me hard. But so I did this bucket list project. And then I caught COVID and I'd been vaccinated and we'd been careful. And I had Delta and I had monoclonal antibodies and I got through it just fine. My life wasn't in danger, but I didn't bounce back very well.
Right.
And it was really scary and upsetting. I had long COVID and a lot of folks have had it. And it kind of hit me that you're not going to be on a job site for a long time, Olivia. Like at that time, I couldn't even put all of my paint into the back of my car. Like there was no getting on a site. And so I had just landed a spot on college that was supposed to just be my studio and where I would meet clients to grow the sign and mural business. And maybe I'd make merch sometimes and sell it up front. Well, we, my husband and friends and I, we all worked real quick to pivot. I don't do all this alone. I have a whole group of people who help me manage my life and my kids and my side projects and whatever. So it was, well, hell, what are we going to do now? Okay, what's the other big dream? And it was opening an art supply store.
Yeah.
And my husband and I have worked really hard to be able to get to a point where we can take on a big thing like that. I mean, I wouldn't, if it had been 8 months before, I would be like, y'all, that's insane. I'm not opening a shop. That's nuts. But so we did. We opened an art supply store and we started off opening on Small Business Saturday. And I was so scared to open that I didn't even announce it was happening. I just did it, which is in retrospect so dumb. I did not do any hyping of opening the shop because I was scared and I always get scared about things. I don't talk about that as often. And so we got through the holidays and did a lot of gift and a lot of kits and not as many art supplies, but we surveyed just about every poor person who came in, had to listen to me ask them their opinions and thoughts on, should we have an art supply store here? What would you like to see in it? Blah, blah, blah. And the response was so great and supportive. And I'm not talking about my friends who came in and shopped that first, holiday season with us. I'm talking about total strangers were about it. And it was so nice. So in January, sidetrack. We got COVID again at Christmas. So it really solidified I need to be spending my time in this shop, not trying to get back out into the job sites. But in January, we started ordering art supplies and moving the shop around and trying to accommodate more and more inventory. And, we're putting everything back into the business. And that's a scary thing, except that our community that always comes through, they've been so enthusiastic about the shop. And, it's a weird thing to visit it. Like I put my work out there and it's a painting, whatever we look at it, it can get painted over, building can come down. That's a thing. But it's another thing to say, here's my physical space and I'm going to advertise it and hope that you come into it. And I have kind of big feelings about how I want people to feel when they come in and the experience that they have.
Sure.
My mom, I'm going to try not to tear up. I haven't cried this week, so this might be it. My mother is Filipino and she is kind of the driving force behind what I do. She moved here from Newport Beach, California in the 70s. Folks were not kind to her many times. She went to Ramey Junior High. She went to Fayetteville High School. She bought back her childhood home in South Fayetteville. And I've watched this woman who I don't look super a lot like. I'm a white passing person. I've watched her be treated really badly in retail spaces. And just, the suspicion and the following around and the disdain. And my mom's experiences have shaped my desire to cover up hate speech. I don't want my mom seeing it.
Sure.
I don't want whatever. But she's also shaping me watching how she's treated in shops has also shaped how I want folks to feel when they come in and how I want them to be treated, whether it's myself or John, my husband working, or a staff member. It's extremely important to us that this thing that we're doing is not a snooty place, is not an unwelcome place. And so aside from all the pretty flowers that I've planted and the sign I've painted and the cute stuff I carry or whatever, this may not be the business side of things that I maybe ought to be focusing on, but I really want people to feel good when they come in because life's kind of rough right now. We have all kind of stuff going on. And it's just always so important to me when I think about this shop that it's a welcoming place. And obviously it's on my mind a lot because I'm rambling to you about it.
No, and that's fine. I mean, I'm glad. I think you've given everybody kind of a glimpse into what this shop means to you and what it's all about. And I certainly want to encourage anyone. I have a lot of friends. My kids go to the Arkansas Arts Academy, but I know a lot of people that are into the arts on so many different levels, but specifically the graphic arts. And I mean, there are a lot of artists that I know. I can think of people that I've had on this show, like Kenya Christian and Shelley Muber. And
Shelley's been so
yeah, Shelley's great. And so, and there's so many in the maker space is growing in Northwest Arkansas. So,
and like a group that, I guess this is the other part of this, wanting it to feel welcoming, is that I have not come from an academic art background. I came from a trade. I just was able to take the skills of being a sign painter to turn it into being a muralist. So it's
called upskilling.
I am most interested in grabbing people who, and I meet them every day. I have a lot of gift stuff in the shop because it's fun to have gift stuff. And I think it's good to have a variety of artful items. I hate saying artful. I've got to think of a better term, but I want to grab the people who will walk in and say, well, I'm not an artist. I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And I don't say that part, but I'll say, well, of course you are. You just haven't found your medium, or you haven't found the thing that really activates you. Because if I just had to exist on myself drawing, well, I certainly am not an artist, right? But I figured out what my skill was. So this shop, when I talk about it being a welcoming place, I want people who don't feel, it's the same concept with my murals, right? People who do not identify themselves as artists or patrons of the arts. I want it to be a space where they can say, maybe I am. So maybe they're in there picking up a gift for a graduation present and they come back a second time for something else. And they maybe spy a block printing kit or some watercolor paints. And they think, well, I'm not an artist, but maybe I'll pick this up. Like, I just want to have people have an easy and accessible way to get into that stuff.
Sure.
So that's really the gist of it. I hate snootiness and snobbery and gatekeeping and people who exclude others. And so that's, as I talk through what I'm doing, even when I'm not being conscious, I've just talked through this so many times that I am aware of it this now in our meeting here. I just want to bring people in and have them feel like they're supposed to be in spaces with art and
embrace it. It's huge. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one thing to go to Crystal Bridges or the Momentary. It's a whole nother thing to realize that we all have that spark of creativity in us, and how you harness that is going to be different for you than it is for me, than it is for the person down the street. So people need to understand that and kind of embrace that inner creative child that we all have in us. I think we all kind of want to be brought into a room where there's some watercolors and just some blank canvases and just a chance for you to just do whatever you want to do. But sometimes life comes so fast that we don't stop to think about that. Yeah.
And like, while I'm, trying to do this, I have to bring this back to Stacy and Lakeisha with My Tea by Design. Mm-hmm. They're literally going into the community and they're literally putting canvases and paints and brushes in the hands of people so that they can have those experiences. And so while, yes, everyone come to my store and check it out, also, these are women who are physically doing that work.
Yeah.
And it's really humbling that I have been able to work alongside them.
Yeah.
And it's always a lesson to talk with them or to read what they've done that week.
Well, and I might add that I know Lakeisha, I mean, they're also doing this as a form of therapy.
Right.
Which is huge.
And in this time, when no one is taking new patients and you can't get into a therapist. And
you look at like the suicide rate among high school kids. Yes. And I just watched that 60-minute special the other day and I got it. My heart was broken by how that, the pandemic is really, the unintended side effect of the pandemic has been that it has created a level of aloneness that people have never experienced before.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come out of that. Some people get into a rut or a funk and it's hard to come out of it. And,
and this is where it's so important for people to step outside of their comfort zone and to reach out in whatever way that they can. Of course, it's awkward to, maybe you see someone in our daily life getting coffee or at the grocery store or on a street corner or whatever. And you notice a shift in them.
Yeah.
And we all pick up on things and it can be so easy to just move on.
Yeah.
Whoa, so-and-so looks pretty rough. But in this time, what Stacy and Lakeisha are doing, where they're bringing it to people and they're doing that work. Like, it's just such an example to all of us, I think, to like step out of our comfort zone and go reach out, because folks are in, you know, despite the fact that we had unemployment paid out and we had some rescue funds here and there and whatever, like, people are in such dire straits right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, again, we sometimes get anesthetized to certain facts and figures that we hear. The real estate market is off the chain and all this other stuff. But there are other challenges that people are having right now. And a lot of times, like you said something very important. I want people to hear that is a lot of times it's just good to say, hey, are you doing okay? You know, just to ask somebody that you might know, or maybe you come in contact with, or, you know, I go to ONF all the time to get coffee, and I'm always talking to people in there, and I have to even force myself to do it from time to time just to check in with somebody, because, you know, it does take a village, and we're all kind of in this together. You know, a lot of times I think that's the trick that a lot of people struggle with, is that everybody thinks they're alone in this, you know, and as A, you're not alone in it. And B, like, everybody and their mother's been through a lot of what a lot of people are going through right now. It's just how we process it, how we talk about it, or we don't talk about it. So I think it's just important to be willing to be transparent when and where possible. Right. Not that you got to put all your business out on the street, but. No,
but there are just times when that effort, and maybe it's sometimes scary to be genuine and to be, you know.
Well, I think the reality is that for most of us, just our human nature and our instincts that we have is that if we show somebody how vulnerable we are, then that means that people will take advantage of us, right? I mean, I also think that, you know, sometimes, you know, we like to portray the type of person that we want to be versus the person that we actually are.
Right.
You know, and that's fine. I mean, I get that, but you just need to understand that this rodeo that you're on is not the first time that this rodeo's been seen.
Right.
And other people have been through this, and some people have had success getting through it, and others have not, because they have recoiled and have decided that they're not going to share and be open and let other people in at their greatest time of need. And I know it's a challenge. And it's a
huge challenge. I mean, I think that there are people that I look to in the community who are really good about showing their vulnerabilities, and they do it, I think, as a service to others. Nate Walls, he's always posting, talking about his journey and
he's not. He will let you know he's not perfect. Yeah.
Even though he is, I mean, Nate's pretty much. He's a good. He's
a good dude.
Brady Carmen is another person, both South Fayetteville residents, that really puts out there the importance of being vulnerable and sharing struggles, and then also cheering on victories, right? And so, I don't know, it can be so challenging to become a person who does that, but we have such good role models, just even in our town. So I have hope. Like, things are really bad now for a lot of folks, and we have scary things maybe in our future, climate stuff. However, you know, economy could go, political things, whatever. But we're really lucky in Northwest Arkansas to have people who are like living it and doing it. And I think that might get us through rough times here. I hope always.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the more generous parts of the country that I've ever lived in. And like I said, I've lived all over, and I've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast. So, you know, anybody listening to this that's not from here, you know, we're not just sitting here crying alone, but we've got people to cry with, and, you know, we're going through our problems, and we're dealing with them, you know, trying to deal with them head on the best way that we can. And the community and the spirit of the community here in Northwest Arkansas affords us that ability. So if you're coming to this area, if you're thinking about relocating or have relocated here, just know that this community is much bigger than you realize.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out here that are willing to sit down with you, have a cup of coffee, chat with you, maybe give you some advice, give you some guidance. And, you know, and again, it's the kind of information and feedback that you might be looking for that is non-judgmental, which is important, right? I mean, because we've all had enough judgmental feedback in our lives. So,
yeah, I think that if you take the scary step to share your needs, or, you know, when I've seen someone say, I have a need here, or I see some folks who have a need here, that's scary. It is hard. You are opening yourself up. But what I almost always see is another person, or a whole bunch of people most of the time, who will come in and say, all right, well, here are these solutions.
Yeah.
Or, okay, well, let's band together and find a solution.
Right.
So for maybe new residents or incoming residents or visitors even, if you can just build up the gumption to say what the need is, you will probably receive support in many different ways.
100%. I absolutely agree with that. So, well, wow, we took this conversation, went in a whole different turn, but it's fine. It's cathartic, and that's why I do it. And it's my podcast, so I can do whatever I want to do with it, right? It's all good, but and sometimes it's necessary. But what's next for Olivia Trimble? What are you hoping to accomplish? And by the way, I want everybody that's listening to this, if you have a child at home that wants to be an artist, if you are an artist of some sort or want to get into art in some way, shape, or form as a hobby or anything, you need to go check out Olivia's shop there on North College. And we'll make sure that we put the address and the website for Sleet City on the show notes so that you guys know how to access and connect with Olivia. And definitely, if you heard about her first here on the podcast, we want to make sure that when you go in there, you tell her that you heard about her on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. And I'm sure she'll take great care of you. So,
yes. So what's next? So, I talked about that I took some time off from painting. I took 6 months to paint my own sign on my own building. And part of that was that I wasn't feeling up to it. And the other part was that, man, that pressure, if you're a sign painter,
yeah, I know,
for you to have a sign that's good is there. So I feel like I'm ready to get back to painting. And what is on the horizon for me, I have my interchange grant funded projects in Eudora and Fox. So those are going to be percolating this year. But here in Northwest Arkansas, part of the beauty of this shop is that it has put me in contact with so many artists and up and coming artists that I haven't had the privilege to know until now. And what is probably next is that I'll be selecting a group, maybe mostly women, who would like to get into public art, and we'll be doing some projects together. My goal is that no one works for free on these. I can't stand it. I can't stand spec work. I don't think it's right. This is not a volunteer thing, but people who will be paid to learn the technical side of putting up large scale pieces of art. I don't really feel like I'm qualified to teach people, much more than those technical things.
Sure.
How do we handle a wall of this texture? How do we handle a contract? How do we handle getting an insurance policy? How do we handle renting big machinery? How do we handle weird terrain? All of these things that I've just learned through trial and error and also sharing of knowledge from other painters. I'm excited to get that information out into our arts community so that we have a whole new, wave of people who are putting up art. And my ultimate kind of, well, it's not sneaky, I'm pretty blunt about it, is that we have so much privilege and wealth in Northwest Arkansas. We have a wealth of public art. We've got all these artists living here. We've got all these corporations with big money. You said yourself, this may be the only place in the state you'd want to live. This may be the only place in the state that I want to live. But I think that there's something about our position here that I believe is important to share with the rest of the state, right? So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to train some folks. I'm going to do this in Eudora and Fox. I'm going to train some folks. And what I hope is that the next steps of my career, whatever they may be beyond this, will be taking my privilege as a Northwest Arkansas resident and using it to maybe incrementally, because I know I'm just an artist here. I don't have, any weird, lofty views of myself, but I want to take what I'm doing and use it to help rural Arkansas, because we have a whole state full of people. Pay it forward, right? We're focusing on making Northwest Arkansas progressive. Little Rock's working hard. And there are certainly people going into other cities, Rachel Reynolds, Dan Hintz, we got all kinds of people who are trying, but I want to make sure that I am also working to just make things better through my kind of narrow skill set for rural Arkansans, because, Northwest Arkansas can only rise so much if the rest of the state is not coming with us. We can't advertise ourselves as a super progressive area, which does get new residents to move here and to grow their companies here and whatever, if the rest of the state is just, struggling the way that they kind of have been for years. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's that whole concept of it takes a village, and it means that everybody from the east side of the village to the west side of the village all have to kind of chip in and work towards that. So, and I think we'll get there. I mean, it's going to take leadership. It's going to take new ideas and new ways to stimulate the kind of growth that we want to see here in the natural state for things to really continue to improve. And I think a lot of it does emanate here in Northwest Arkansas.
Absolutely.
But then it cascades over to the rest of the state.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll save this long-winded thing for another time, but I think there's something to be said for people who live in the Ozarks.
Sure.
You know, we're a peculiar group. We have all kinds of lore and old weird stuff, hill people. But I think that we have a special way of handling growth and challenges and newcomers. And it's really shaped this unique space that we're living in. Yeah,
no, well, absolutely. I mean, listen, that puts a perfect bow in it, I think, just in terms of where we are and what you've shared. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was well worth the time and effort of getting you here finally. So thank you so much, Olivia Trimble, for joining us today on the podcast. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn more about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. I forgot to ask you, Olivia, what is the website that you want to send people to? Sure. If you'd like to visit the website, it's just www.sleetcity.com. Okay, that's like a sleeting rain, SLEET city.com. So perfect. All right. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Make sure you sign up today. You can also subscribe to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it, and please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.